Short-term thinking is holding your company back. You're planning next year's budget, next quarter's KPIs, again. And deep down you know it's not enough. You're stuck in a 12-month loop. And it's costing your team time, relevance, and resilience. Let's explore why planning beyond 12 months is crucial for long-term success. If you've ever sat in a leadership meeting and thought, why are we only talking about what's right in front of us? You're not alone. This is how most organizations operate. It feels safe, predictable, and measurable, but it's a trap. And it keeps even great leaders from seeing real change coming. Most leaders think their problem is uncertainty, but the real issue, they've been trained to manage, not to anticipate. We optimize for efficiency, not adaptability. We reward short-term wins, not long-term vision. That's why the future always feels like a surprise. But it can be different. This is Paul Polman. He was CEO of Unilever from 2009 to 2019. When Pullman took over as CEO of Unilever in 2009, the world was deep in financial crisis. Most companies were slashing costs, racing for short-term gains, and making decisions based on next quarter's earnings calls. But Pullman, he walked into the boardroom and made a radical announcement. He announced that Unilever would stop publishing its quarterly results and would focus on long-term projects instead. His reasoning was that better decisions would be made when not focusing on quarterly commitments. He went even further by challenging investors to follow his long-term value creation model or invest their money elsewhere. That might not sound revolutionary until you realize that for decades, public companies had lived and died by those quarterly numbers. Instead, Pullman launched the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, a 10-year strategy aimed at reducing the company's environmental footprint while doubling its size. He told investors, if you don't believe in long-term value creation, sell your shares. Imagine that, a CEO telling shareholders to get lost if they didn't share his long view. And guess what? Eventually, the share price recovered as short-term investors sold their shares and long-term investors took their place. Unilever thrived. The company outperformed many of its peers, gained trust with consumers, and became a global leader in corporate sustainability. Paul Polman's story is a masterclass in escaping the trap of short-termism. He showed that long-term thinking isn't naive, it's strategic. So next time you feel stuck in the cycle of short-term wins, ask yourself, are you managing for the next quarter or for the next generation? While Paul Polman's actions are a good example of taking a long-term perspective, most leaders take short-term decisions to please the market. In a survey of over 400 US business leaders, 80% of them said that they were willing to take decisions they knew would be bad for the long-term value of the business to deliver on short-term earnings promises. That's astonishing. Another example of long-term thinking is Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia. In 2022, he shocked the business world. He gave his $3 billion company to a trust and a non-profit, not to family, not to shareholders, but to the planet. This wasn't a gimmick. For decades, Patagonia had been building towards a long-term vision. Environmental activism at its core, repairs over replacements, campaigns urging people to buy less. It was about aligning the company's entire business model around the question, what does a better future look like? When Chouinard handed over the company, he said, Earth is now our only shareholder. This wasn't about maximizing this quarter's profits, it was about maximizing impact forever. You've now seen how Paul Polman ditched the quarterly earning race, and how Patagonia's founder gave away his company for the sake of the planet. But what connects them? They're not playing to win. They're playing a different game altogether. Simon Sinek calls this the infinite game. In a finite game, like football or chess, you have clear rules, fixed players, and a defined end. You know when you've won. But in business, there is no final whistle, no scoreboard that says game over, only the question, are you still in the game tomorrow? Sinek argues that too many leaders play business like a finite game, chasing quarterly wins, market share, or their next promotion. But real impact comes when you switch to an infinite mindset. That's what Paul Polman did at Unilever. That's what Chouinard did at Patagonia. They prioritized purpose over profit, and paradoxically built more resilient and profitable organization. Here's the shift. From outcompeting others to outlasting the short-term mindset. from maximizing profit to maximizing relevance, from chasing trends to shaping the future. Before moving on to the 3-step framework to solve the problem of short-term thinking, let me ask you this. What's keeping you stuck in the short term? Firefighting problems instead of designing the future. It's not just pressure, it's a missing feedback loop. You can't change what you don't measure. The Future Readiness Scorecard is your team's fast track out of short-term thinking. It's a free diagnostic used by forward-looking leaders to benchmark their strategic capacity for agility, innovation, and long-term impact. Long-term leaders step back, assess, and move forward with intention. And this scorecard gives you that pause, the clarity to break free from the cycle and actually lead change. Click the link below. In under 3 minutes, you'll see exactly where you stand and what you need to work on for a future-ready team. Now let's get back to long-term thinking. Leaders like Paul Polman didn't just reject quarterly pressures for the sake of principle. They redefined what winning even means. They asked bigger questions. They looked beyond immediate profits to long-term purpose, people, and planet. But here's the thing. This isn't just about values. It's about strategy. Because the world is getting faster, weirder, and more interconnected, and more unpredictable as well. You can't lead into the future if you're trapped in the now. So what do future-ready leaders actually do differently? They zoom out. They practice foresight, and they use a simple, repeatable 3-step framework. You can't transform what you can't see. Most strategic plans focus on 12 to 18 months, but real transformation, that takes years. Future-ready leaders shift their thinking to 5, 10, or even 20 years. In the late 1990s, Preussag was a German industrial conglomerate rooted in mining and logistics, a 20th century powerhouse. But they saw the writing on the wall. Heavy industry was declining, and globalization and lifestyle shifts were opening up new frontiers. Instead of optimizing their industrial core, they made a radical bet on the future of travel. Over several years, they acquired Hapag-Lloyd, Thomson Travel, and other tour operators, fully transforming into TUI, now one of the world's largest tourism groups. This wasn't a 12-month pivot. It was a decade-long transformation, made possible by leadership that dared to ask the following question: where will growth come from 10 to 20 years from now? They expanded their time horizon and reimagined their core identity. So how can you apply it? Ask your team, what's a headline we don't want to read in 10 years about our organization? Or if you want, you can flip it. What bold ambition would excite us 10 years from now? And this is a mindset shift from what's urgent to what's inevitable and what's possible. Change doesn't come out of nowhere. It whispers before it shouts. Foresight leaders scan for weak signals, subtle shifts in behavior, technology, policy, and culture. They're not looking for certainty. They're looking for early clues. In the early 2000s, DVD rentals were booming, but Netflix noticed early signals. Broadband was improving, consumer habits were shifting, and on-demand was becoming a buzzword. Instead of clinging to DVDs, they invested in streaming infrastructure and content. What happened? By the time competitors caught on, Netflix had transformed from a mail-order company into a global entertainment powerhouse. Build a scanning habit. Assign team members to track trends in adjacent fields: tech, youth culture, AI, geopolitics. Use a tool like Steep to broaden your radar. Ask, what are we not paying attention to that could disrupt us or inspire us? There's a mindset shift again from let's wait and see to let's look and listen. If you only plan for one future, you're planning to be wrong. Organizations that thrive in complexity don't lock in on one projection. They build scenarios, narratives of what could happen, and rehearse how they'd respond. Example, Shell is famous for using scenario planning since the 1970s. When oil shocks and political upheaval hit, they weren't caught off guard. They had rehearsed multiple possibilities. More recently, UNESCO used scenario workshops with educators to imagine the future of learning by 2050, resulting in adaptive policies rather than static reforms. How can you apply it? You can try and write 3 radically different headlines from the year 2035 about your industry. Then ask, what would we do in each of these futures? Use these scenarios to stress test your current strategy. Is it future ready or fragile? So there's another mindset shift from here's our plan to here's how we adapt no matter what. This is how future-fit leaders think. They zoom out, they tune in, and they play out multiple futures before they happen. This isn't guesswork. It's a structured way to make your strategy resilient, imaginative, and ready for disruption. But here's the catch. Even if you want to think like a futurist, most people never build the habit. They're stuck in reactive mode because they believe they don't have time. That's why I made this next video. It shows you the exact 10-minute practice I use daily to scan the horizon without overwhelm, confusion, or needing a research team. If you're serious about making future thinking part of how you lead, watch this video next.